Probably every one of us had a dream about flying or feeling light and floating above the ground. Is it happening only in our dreams? The ability to levitate, denying the law of gravity and hovering in the air without any help, is rare but documented paranormal ability that is usually, though not commonly, attributed to saints. Saint Francis of Assisi was often caught up in the height of a tree in his religious ecstasy. At least once, a brother visiting him watched him hovering so high in the air and surrounded by such glare that he could hardly see him. More contemporary saint, Padre Pio, commencing his 7-year study for priesthood, traveled to the friary of St. Francis of Assisi in Umbria. Religious devotees point to this time that inexplicable phenomena allegedly began to occur. One of Pio's fellow friars later claimed to have seen him in ecstasy and allegedly levitating above the ground. In 1603, at Copertino, Italy, Giuseppe Dessa was born. Sickly boy was considered to be a dumbhead, but his piety and severity of mortification astounded as for someone so young. At the age of 17, he was admitted to the Capuchin order, from where he was quickly released because he could not concentrate on simple tasks. However, the mistake of the local bishop gave him a place in a Franciscan monastery, where his mortification became even more fanatical. His ecstasy drew widespread attention, rather undesirable, so that he was even interrogated by the Inquisition. The 3-year investigation led to his acquittal. The inquisitors allowed him to pray in their chapel, where he also experienced ecstatic levitation. He floated in the air towards the high altar among the shouts of the nuns, "He will burn!" But the fire didn't do him any harm. During his stay in Rome, Pope Urban VIII received him in audience, and this experience made Joseph so delighted that he immediately rose in the air. On another occasion, when he was walking in the garden with a religious confrere, he suddenly rose to the height of the poplar, but couldn't get off it on his own, and a high ladder had to be brought. Persecuted by his hostile superior, he lost his gift for 2 years, but regained it when he was enthusiastically received in Assisi. Giuseppe called the periods of levitation "my faintings." It was said that he could lift heavy objects and lift people into the air. Miracles and rumors of miracles have accompanied him since childhood. One of the best certified was the healing of a raging madman. After ordering the sick man to entrust himself to God, Joseph grabbed his hair, and so they both rose in the air, where they remained for almost an entire hour. This is the only known case of a saint who caused levitation of another man. When he was dying, the doctor who looked after him noticed that Brother Joseph was hovering 15 centimeters above the chair. He died saying that he hears voices and smells paradise. 104 years later, he was canonized as Saint Joseph of Cupertino. The most practical of medieval saints, Teresa of Avila, often fell into ecstasy and stated that she was levitating in the air. Teresa was afraid that her experiences could be an illusion and vigorously denied her sanctity. However, time after time, she floated in the air in front of the nuns, and several times it happened in the presence of Bishop of Avila. When she felt that she was approaching this way, she begged the sisters of her monastery to hold her. To Teresa, this experience embarrassed her, so sometimes she tried to resist him, but then she felt so exhausted, like a man who fought a strong giant. If she gave in, the experience of levitation gave her great sweetness. Once, When Teresa received communion from the bishop through an iron grill, as was customary, she felt that she was beginning to float. She grabbed the grill to stop levitation, crying out, "Don't let a creature as unworthy as I was taken as a holy woman." Feeling as if a great strength under her feet lifted her up, she said that the levitation at first filled her with great fear. I have to admit that after a period of elation, I felt as if all my weight had been removed from my body. Sometimes I barely felt my feet touching the ground. Not all levitants are levitating as a result of particular religious discipline. 19th century spiritual medium Daniel Douglas Home was famous for his ability to levitate. Home's levitation was accompanied by experiences related to religious ecstasy, which was explained by the blessing of the spirits of the dead. The first recorded case of home levitation was involuntary. In August 1852, in Connecticut, during a seance in which he served as a medium, he suddenly soared into the air. He trembled from head to toe from struggling joy and fear. Again he pulled away from the floor, and the third time he rose to the ceiling, which he touched gently with his hands and feet. Home often repeated this showcase during a 30-year career. One time in 1868, he rose in the air and floated through a window to the third floor of a building, then returned through another window. This happened in the presence of 3 witnesses, who enjoyed a good reputation. Attempts have been made to discredit witnesses by citing divergences in their accounts, but even if we ignore this case, there are statements from hundreds of other people who saw Home levitating, usually in broad daylight. He was never proven to be fraud or any other form of hypnosis or collective suggestion. Although he could later levitate when he wanted to, sometimes it did without his consciousness. I don't feel any hands lifting me up. I'm most often raised vertically. My hands often go numb, stretching above my hand, as if they were gripping an invisible force that pulls me off the floor. But what to think about photographic evidence before the digital era? On June 6, 1936, Illustrated London News posted photos of levitating yogi Subayah Pulvar. Before the eyes of 150 witnesses, he entered a small tent where he was photographed lying down, holding a stick wrapped in fabric. The witnesses left. After a few minutes, the tent was removed. Subaya hung a meter above the ground in a deep trance, with his hand resting lightly on the stick wrapped in fabric. He was photographed from all sides for 4 minutes, and then the tent was unfolded again. Through thin walls, photographer P.I. Plunkett saw the yogi's body swing, then fall, still in horizontal position. It took him 5 minutes to travel 90 centimeters from the top of the stick to the ground. When he fell, his helpers brought him to us and asked if he wanted to bend his limbs. Even in a few people, we couldn't do it. The existence of stick and tent raises many questions here, and the whole case seems to be rather elevation of street artists' performances rather than actual levitation. What to think about it? Some parapsychology and religious believers interpret alleged instances of levitation as the result of supernatural action of psychic power or spiritual energy. The scientific community states that there is no evidence that levitation exists, and alleged levitation events are explainable by natural causes such as magic trickery, illusion, and hallucination. The answer is up to you.